think, at least for myself, we've gotten a lot of material, and I am still reading through that material quite honestly. I think my inclination is to wait and make a decision on the 8th because I'm still trying to, I want to make sure that I read everything, that I understand it, and I need to read all the letters because a good number of letters have come in. So I would not care to move this agenda item forward today to have a vote on it. One of the things that I did find concerning was that we seem to be in a position where we are being asked forgiveness rather than permission. So that does concern me a little bit about what kind of a message that sends to others who would choose to do business and not go through the proper processes of the zoning requirements. That said, is there any discussion from the commission?
I think it's been through the process enough. Most of the letters we've gotten has been all in support of it. So I don't know. We've gone over this. The planning commission's gone over it. I don't know why we need to postpone it.
One of the issues that was brought up was the possibility of, because we're talking about conditional use, and that is that it may not include all of the animals that have been used. Some of the concern that has been raised has revolved around the lynx and some of the other animals. That's something that we might have to look at. That is, do we grant this with the proviso that those animals not be included in this particular issue? While we've gotten a lot of support for it, we have had some concerns raised too. So with those are the two issues that at least that are weighing on my mind is, do we grant this with the possible provision that certain animals not be included? And like I said, secondarily, it does raise concerns about the issue of asking forgiveness, not permission, which I find a little bit disturbing. And at that point, how do we really push back if someone else decides to start a business without getting the proper permits? How do we then justify not giving them the same kind of consideration? So that's what's concerning me, and that's something that I want to research and think about a little bit more. And like I said, I do still need to, in my mind, study on what the material has been put in front of me.
Commissioner, I don't want to put any pressure on making a decision. It's important to have a property right. So if you would like to move it over for 1 more week,
Actually, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. If you would like to move it over for 2 weeks, I will support you in that. I too am also concerned that we have rules and process, and there is the issue of asking forgiveness for the protection up front. But nonetheless, I'm going to make my decision based on the law that we have in front of us. And so, if I know there's many more pressures on presiding commissioners, so if you feel more comfortable having 2 weeks to think about this a little bit, that's a question.
I'd like to see the possible solution of that conditional use being based on the animals in question. Quite honestly, I'd like a little bit more study on that, because if we do grant it based on that, I want to be, in my own mind, clear on what it is we are moving on. I don't want to, I want to make sure that when we do put this out there, that it is consistent and that's been talked through well enough to where we can make that decision.
Commissioner, if I may, if I hear you right, you're saying you want to look at the record you have more, but it also sounded like you're saying that you wanting to make sure you know what animals we're talking about. If I heard you right,
Yes.
then may I suggest just procedurally, if you're not going to decide today and you have that question, Mr. Tapp and I were looking at the record ourselves, trying to make sure as we go along that we have all the animals identified that the applicant's talking about. If you want to ask that question of the applicant right now, that would be okay if everybody else agrees. You just limit it to verifying what animals we're in fact talking about, her request including, because we were looking, it looks like I've made a list of what I think she's asking, and Matt's made his list, and it's close, but there was one question that was open, and I think that's what you're getting at. So maybe since she's here and maybe make some hay while the sun shines, because that's the only question that you have that I understand is outside of the existing record.
The other question I have that would be somewhat procedural is, if we do go down that road, should that list be inclusive or exclusive?
Yes, and you,
And I'm not sure exactly, and to tell you the truth, I would want some guidance before we pass an ordinance based on that. I don't want to go off without having had the benefit of some counsel on that.
well, there's already been a lot of testimony, written record made, so it's your discretion as the commission, if you would like to ask the applicant a question that you can't get from the record you have. Today would be a good day to do that if that's what you're in fact looking for.
I think what we would ask is that list that was submitted to us, the comprehensive list, it is the list, is that accurate?
I need to double check that because I have a list that I think has been submitted as the totality of the types of animals that you have there. And I hope the number also, but if you've got your list, I can go down the list of what I have and you can just check them off and tell me if you have anything that's not on the list that I have available to me. Because it does make a difference. So, council, is that where I just go down the list of what I have?
Yeah, if you're making your notes from what you think is in the record, and I would suggest maybe just have the applicant come to the microphone and confirm if that's what she has or if there's something missing that you're, because I think that answer, I think that's the question Commissioner Nolte, one of the questions Commissioner Nolte had.
And like I said, the thing is, what I want to do is make sure that when we craft this particular variance, should we go this route, that it is, the language is reflective of what it is we're trying to do. Like I said, the question of exclusive, inclusive is one of the questions.
Well, that's a decision you all have to make in terms of that, but in terms of making the record or getting the record to make a decision, now's a good opportunity to ask to make sure you know what animals are in fact being discussed, so there's no dispute.
If we could get the applicant then to just set up the microphone so that she can be heard on the record, I can tell you what I think is there on the list that I have. So it's my understanding that there's and I apologize if I mispronounce some of these names. The vervet monkey.
Vervet monkey, correct.
Okay. A serval.
Servals, yes.
Jumper's cat.
Jaffa, yes.
I don't know how to say this one. Carousel.
Caracal.
Caracat.
Caracal.
Caracal.
Yes.
Swift fox.
Yes.
Fennec fox.
Yes, you're doing good.
Hedgehog.
Correct.
Chinchilla.
Yes.
Wallaby.
Yes.
Prairie dog.
I don't have a prairie dog.
You do not have prairie dog.
So I did have a prairie dog when this started. So she was older. It was in her last life plan and has passed with the vet and all that.
Is that something that you might have again?
Yes.
Okay. Rabbits.
Currently I have one. Okay. So
Armadillo.
yes.
Porcupine.
Yes.
Red and yellow tortoises.
Yes.
Leopard tortoise.
Yes.
Oh, here's a good one. Argentine pigeon.
Very good. Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
This one gets worse. Yellow Euromastic.
Yes.
A genetic.
Yes.
Fennec fox.
Yes. I think you said that one.
Swift fox.
Yep.
Brazilian three-banded armadillo.
Right. So when we said armadillo is the
Hedgehog.
It might be the difference between South America and North America. So
Hedgehog.
correct.
Okay. Did I miss anything?
Give me just a second. Let me go through it.
I don't know if you have a list or anything that you check down or not.
I have a ringtail.
What is a ringtail black?
They are referred to as a ringtail cat. It's actually not a cat. They used to be miners' cats. It's the state animal of Arizona. They're He's 12 weeks old.
And then you provided us something on the record with the total number of animals that you have at your place.
Well,
right now.
I've given different totals because there's been the total of what animals are under the EDW and then what of them are outside. And then what altogether was been there, what's came. So there's quite a few different totals because I know like last time we asked how many animals, or at the board asked how many animals were outside, and then when they were doing the limit, they went to just what the ones that are actually on the list that are outside. So like the Canada lynx and the swift foxes are outside. The fennec fox is inside, so it wasn't part of that list of 7 that were out. So I can give clarification, but there's been a lot of questions of this, that, and it wasn't clarification of whole or all of it.
And I don't think we're trying to put you on the spot or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I just don't
If you
want
want to, if it would be helpful, we could certainly, get another, just the list that we've got to resubmit it, just to make sure that we get a comprehensive list.
right. And I mean, just because they do change, like I said, in the prairie dog and then the ringtail, so.
It looks like there are plans or.
Yes.
You would like to say something.
Yes, Commissioner Ridgway, MACTAP, Planning and Zoning Manager. As you may recall, for your consideration, the Planning and Zoning Commission added a condition number 12, which would limit the number of EDW animals to 30 maximum adults.
And
That's brought before you for your consideration, but the Commission obviously is more than capable of changing that.
And then when we were discussing that at the meeting, Matt, just correct me if I'm wrong, because my understanding was that was 30 of the ones that were outside that were on the list. So it was because we were talking about the 7 that were out at the time, which are the 5 swift fox and the 2 Canada lynx.
That's not my recollection. This is a total number of EDW, whether it's inside or outside. It doesn't matter if it's indoor or outdoor. So that was what I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission's intent was, just a max total on the property, whether it's indoors or outdoor, of the EDW, which rabbits are not considered an EDW, obviously.
Right.
Well, that was one of the things I was
Or prairie dogs.
If a Flemish giant is considered an exotic, it's an exotic rabbit, it's the largest one. So that was where some questions were. I did not submit the porcupine originally as being part, we submitted as a question because it wasn't listed, but you have rodents over a pound. And if somebody knows, they know that a porcupine is considered a rodent. So there's been a lot of question with that. And we went, I don't know, minutes from the last meeting when we did it with the board, went through, because I wanted to be clarified also if, and I had used rabbit as an example, had babies, what that would be, and then I didn't want them to go over the limit or break the code or agreement, and they stated that, that's why they put the 6-month thing.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's why I assumed that the 6 months was in there, because you can't necessarily predict on litter.
Right, and the 30 was based on those 2 species that were outside, which they're, neither of those species are breed more than once a year. Some of the other species can. The fennec, I have a male, he would not do well emotionally with female, he's not, has no purpose of breeding, so it wouldn't be, I guess clarification would be, he's for all of us.
I think the other thing that would be helpful too, when we have the list of animals, I don't recall a designation on exotic, non-exotic. What would that be, domestic animals? Or?
Yes.
Well, and then you've also got like farm and livestock, so you have goat and then 2
Well,
dogs.
separate. So just to gain clarity with the rabbits, we do have a restriction on rodents weighing more than 1 pound. However, guinea pigs and rabbits are exempt from that. So any rabbit, any guinea pig is exempt.
The porcupine was the rodent that I was questioning because a porcupine's considered a rodent and she weighs over a pound.
So that would require, that'd be part of the EDW.
So as far as the EDW animals that we're talking about, other than a ringtail cat, you think that the list that I just restated is basically everything that you have on your property?
Correct. At the moment, and other than the prairie dog, it's still on.
Domestics.
Right. So, but if I would like to, I mean, if we're extending it then to go back to the board and see there's the interpretation, because that was the interpretation that I got, was we were talking about, because they asked which animals it was that were outside, and said, and when they were out to view the facility and look at the animals, all of the animals that were a concern to see were the ones that were outside. So, and the ones inside were not of interest to the basement. So,
That was not my recollection, and legal counsel was there as well, and maybe Mr. Tenflew could chime in too, but I believe it was just a max total number of 30, indoor or outdoor.
and was
That's
there
what is-
to
that's what's been provided to us is the total maximum number of adult EW animals at one time is limited.
And that was at the time of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on August, so it was not during the visit.
That's what's in the record that I understand to be the record is that when planning and zoning finally made their record, that their record was, and what they signed off on, was the total maximum number of adult EW animals at one time was limited to 30. And then they went on to say that young EW animals shall not be included in the total maximum allowed up to 6 months of age.
correct. The 30 was based after asking, because they asked how many animals were outside. And then it was how many of them are on the EDW list in Clay County, which was just the fox and the lynx. So that was 7 and then the 30.
So
It was limiting at those. So that was my understanding, and we talked about it.
So is it fair to say right now that you have approximately 30 adult EDW animals of some sort or the other on your property? Or more?
I don't have 30 EDW animals that are EDW animals listed with Clay County or with the state of Missouri. It depends on, again, which ones. If you add animals, serval is not on the list. It's the feline that I have the most of. They're not on the, they're not on the EDW list for Clay County. They're not in the state of Missouri. So, and they also can breed more than once a year. Some of them, some don't breed at all. 2 of them are retired, and part of them is to not have to, make them move from their home because they're in there. But they would be part of that count if you're adding them to it. So I guess the question is, are we putting other animals on that list? Then that changes where the number is, because I would be at 30.
Let me ask a simpler question just to go back. Do you have any animals on your property other than the animals that I listed along with the ring-tailed cat that you've added?
The goat had a baby.
A goat.
A goat, and I have a Great Pyrenees puppy. Yeah, that wasn't originally. So, and then there's the other domestics that were there. So I don't have anything that's over 50 pounds other than the Pyrenees will reach that and they'll retrieve them.
And counselor or manager, either one, with regard to domestic animals like goat, dogs, those are ruled under completely something.
Yeah, domestic animals that's an identifiable list and they're not included. Exotic and dangerous wild animals is mentioned in the code, and there's a representative list of the types of animals in the code. So it's not an exhaustive list, but it gives a representation of the types of things we're talking about.
It is not an exhaustive list. It even says the animals listed in parentheses are intended to act as examples and are not to be construed as an exhaustive list or limit the generality of each group of animals unless otherwise specified. So,
Right, I do, we can see that, and that was one of the questions at the last meeting, not ours, but with the board, asking which animals we were referring to, because I wanted to use the right number, and that's when it went down to the outside 7, just the swift fox and the Canada lynx. So,
Did you say that you had 1 or 2 older animals that you described as retired?
I have we've retired a couple of the servals that they're older, and they're not part of the breeding program. They are part of the research with the National Institute of Health. One of them actually carries a very rare gene, and so some of his offspring are some that, you know, we're following and tracking in his lineage and all that. So I guess he is actually still a part of, you know, program business, but I don't want to eliminate, because to take a number down and eliminate based on them not being part of breeding or not being taken to, you know, programs and stuff for education at this point, and to have to remove them from their home that they know.
Are these, did you say they're two males?
No, it's male and female. They're a bonded pair.
And, you don't intend to breed them?
No, they've had their list. And there are also animals that are not, you know, I don't plan to breed some of them that can't, some of them because they're one different.
How long do circles normally live?
They're gonna be like your regular domestic when they're in captivity. They can anywhere from 12 to 20 years. The oldest one on record is 30, and there's only one that we found out so far.
How old are the circles that you have in your possession?
These two are 16 and 18 approximately. We're still working with the FCF and the Rare Species Fund with Tiger Spark. We are putting together, trying to work on the lineage and breeding and checking to see so that when the zoos and when everybody's trading and all that, that there's no inbreeding and trying to find a couple of the genes that are rare. So
they're intact and non-neutered, but they're old.
right, so they're not breeding. And they're retired, so they're not exhibiting either.
They're not being exhibited either.
And there are a few animals that I would say that are retired from exhibiting because, you know, we always, if the animal doesn't feel like performing, doesn't feel like, you know, being seen, going somewhere, we don't make them do anything that they don't want to do. Just like one of us, it wouldn't be very much fun for them or for everybody else around. So that's part of it. My female Canada Lynx is a wonderful ambassador animal. She has done many programs. And she's just fantastic. The male is sweet, but as he's gotten older, he's not in the public. He doesn't really like a lot of large groups or, you know, really any groups around. He's not aggressive by any means. He just would rather go in a corner and be ignored. But she can still do programs, but she's part of the breeding program with him. And so 6 months out of the year, she doesn't go and exhibit for the health-wise of that. So they kind of it's a mix.
Did you say caracal lynx?
They're called a caracal, but they're kind of like when I say the ringtail cat, but it's not actually part of the feline family. Caracal it's an African cat. It's basically like the African lynx. They're you've got the serval and then you've got them.
I think I've got it. The only thing, I want to make sure the list that I have is correct as far as what you have at your place. And so just to restate that, I said everything that you have at your place plus a ringtail ringtail cat plus a couple of domestic animals that would not be included in this.
Right, when you said lynx, just to clarify, but before that, when you said the lynx, the Canada lynx is the one that's been in question and that we've talked about because that's the state of Missouri, and then on the list, I have 2 Siberian lynx also. They haven't been in question because they weren't on the list, but they've been seen by everybody because they are outside. So just to clarify, if our numbers are there, are 2 others.
Is that on either one of your lists? Canada lynx, Siberian lynx,
We have Canadian lynx.
Canada lynx, Siberian lynx?
And that's the state of Missouri's list too, the Canada lynx. That's what's registered with the sheriff's office.
Are they the same thing, different things?
They're different ones. One's actually North American, one is Siberia. You've got, it's a different.
In the transmittal, we just said lynx. Canadian lynx, Siberian lynx, the lynx.
Okay. So,
I'm sorry, I'm not trying
That's
to be
okay,
confusing.
I'm just really trying to nail this down because it's very important. The list I said, plus the Canada links, plus the Siberian links, plus the ringtail cat, plus some domestics. And that's it.
Correct.
All right, we're good. Thank you.
Once again, I do want to say that the two issues, at least on my mind, are the two that I mentioned. I think that there is I think there's agreement even among those who have concerns that what you're doing is good work, and the facility is something that is a positive thing. I'm just wanting to take into account as much as possible the concerns of those living around. So that's why I want to revisit that a little bit more carefully. So I appreciate that. Any information related to those 2 points that can be forwarded to certainly be helpful. Yes, Mr. Ford.
Just very briefly, I did send a memorandum to the commissioners trying to address the issue of forgiveness versus permission. And let me just reiterate very quickly that we easily could take the position that we don't need a conditional use permit, that there's 4 exemptions that may apply in this case. And one, that her research as a facility, 2, educational facility, 3, her accreditation, and 4, that she effectively has been grandfathered in because of USDA licensing. So with that being said, there was testimony that before she ever bought this property, she did contact Clay County to see if she would be able to house her servals, who could be considered an exotic animal. They're not specifically on the list. And there was never an issue raised. This is not an issue where she's been cited. This is an issue where, after the fact, the Director of Planning and Zoning said, you need a conditional use permit. And rather than say, no, I don't, she is submitting to that process. But like I said, she could easily take the position that we don't need one out of courtesy. And what we're talking about is a 2-year conditional use permit. So if there are any issues or problems, that can be revoked. It doesn't have to be renewed. It's specific as to the person and the property. So this is in no way a case where she was trying to get away with anything. This is a case where before she bought the property, she checked with the people who should know, no issues were raised, and easily take the position that we don't need a conditional use permit. So, but we're here asking for one. We believe that is an appropriate process to go through. But I also have to respectfully tell the commissioners that if the conditional use permit is denied, we will then fall back on our position we don't need one. So.
Let's go ahead. Is there any